I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby here with Academy Award nominated songwriter Daniel Pemberton, who scored David O. Russell's latest film, Amsterdam. Daniel, talk to me about working on a David O. Russell film and what the energy he brings to it, and what's his interaction with you as a composer?
I mean, it's a pretty crazy ride, but I think the thing that's really fascinating about working with David is it's someone who really cares about art and cares about trying to like cinema really, and just trying to tell stories that aren't normally told in ways that aren't normally told. And that's kind of what drew me to the film. I came on the film pretty late. They'd had it sort of tried a few things out in music beforehand that hadn't worked out, which I think is partly due to just the film being a very complex film. It's not a straightforward, generic, formulaic movie. It is a complicated movie with so many different strands in it that I think it was difficult to work out what the score should be tonally. So I came on pretty late, and very late actually, but I think in some ways that was great because I watched a cut of the film. I found it very moving. I thought it was a great movie, and I think because I came with a kind of outsider's viewpoint as one of the first people to sort of see the movie who hadn't been working on it for sort of 2 years or whatever, there's stuff that instantly connected with me, and so I just said, look, let me just go away and write some stuff. I've got an idea. I kind of got this idea of like all woodwinds as like I like trying to start a movie, like try and work out, okay, how do I make this movie feel special and different to all the other movies scores I've done before, and so each project I try and approach very differently. And with this one, I just felt there was something about the film that straddles so many different stories. It has comedic elements. It's got beautiful love and a friendship story. It's got suspense. It's got conspiracy. Like, how can I create something that can cover all those bases but not be a generic orchestral film score? And so I kind of had this idea of woodwinds because I just felt there was a lightness to them and an optimism that I felt was really right for the film. And pretty much straight after they screened it for me in London, I kind of came home. I just started writing because I was really inspired. And pretty much the first thing I wrote is the first thing that opens and ends the film.
Wow.
And I really enjoy it when you have that kind of gut reaction to something, and your instinct is always worth listening to sometimes. And so that got sent over to them in America, and then we started working a bit remotely. I went to see them in America, came back very quickly because we didn't have a lot of time, and I pretty much wrote and recorded the whole thing in about a month, which was very intense.
How quickly does the song, like you mentioned, you got home and you were instantly inspired. How quickly can you write that first opening song? Like, did that just all come to you instantly? Is that just sort of in your nature?
Yeah, I mean, look, every film is different, and some things, like I'm just working on Spider-Verse 2 at the moment, and there's like a 3-minute sequence that I've basically spent 4 days on, constantly rewriting it, binning it, rewriting it, and it's like some things are very tricky and some things just flow. And I think what was good with Amsterdam was there was something in it that I really connected with in the film. Just on a personal level, some stuff in my life I just felt really connected to the story of the film. And sometimes when you've got the idea and the idea works, then it's very exciting. Sometimes you can go very fast. If you're, because also, I really love writing music. So when you get that thing when you're like, okay, I can just go now. I don't have to worry about at the beginning. The beginning is always great because the beginning is, you don't have time for notes. You've got to do your thing. It's the later bit of the process where everyone throws your notes in. But what was good about this, there wasn't a lot of time for lots of notes. So ended up with a score that I'm really proud of. And it was great working with David and Jay and Christian, who Christian Bale was one of the producers on it as well. And it was an intense but great experience.
And I want to talk about the song Time. As you mentioned, it's the beginning and the end, but then you team up with Giveon and Drake for the original song. And I'm obsessed with this song. So I want to get in a deep dive here. First things first, how do you partner up with Giveon and Drake? What formed that? Are these just friends of yours that you hang out with
Oh
regularly?
yeah, I mean, I'm always like Drake's always popping around for a cup of tea. No, Drake was a producer on the movie, and he was a childhood friend of Matt Budman, who's one of the producers, who's very closely involved with this film. And I always, like, for the instance I saw the film, I was like, I really would like to try and end this on a song. And there's a line in the film that Valerie, who's played by Margot Robbie, says, that's like, I'll always be grateful for the time we had together. And she says that as a line in the film. I'm not even sure if that is in the final cut, because the film, you know, David loves to just keep cutting, keep changing, like new ideas all the time. So I can't even remember if that's in the final version of the film, because I've seen this film so many times in so many different iterations. I don't know what's what, but it was a line that really like jumped out at me. And in some ways I was like, that's what this film is about. This film is about the friendship between these three people and this moment they have in Amsterdam that is beautiful. It is magical. It's life-changing. It creates a memory in your life that you don't even realize it at that moment, how important that can be. And I'd had, you know, I'd had a couple of things in my personal life where I was kind of looking back at moments and realizing how important they were. And it really resonated with me, that idea. And I was like, okay, that is a really good basis for a song that sort of encapsulates for me what the idea of the movie was. And so I started off with this idea of the time we had together as a kind of, you know, early lyric idea, kind of, you know, I wanted to base it around the main theme. So the idea is the whole musical arc of the movie. We start with a very simple version of the theme. We hear it in lots of different versions as different thematic things, different moments in the film. And then we conclude with the sort of the kind of big final version of it. And then we go to the song using the same idea, the same structure, the same language of woodwinds, flutes. And so I just started off getting this thing together. And then I was like, Matt was like, we should get this over to Drake and his guy Giveon, you know, whose stuff I'd heard, thought like, it's got beautiful voice. And so I sent them what I had. They tweaked some stuff, they did some changes, they did some stuff. And then we ended up with a song, and it all happened like crazy fast. Like no one believed we would get this done.
Wow.
Like they were like, we're just going to go. They were like, we're going to go with your end credit music. It's fine. And I'm like, no, we've got to do this song. Like, they're like, why are you trying to make your life harder? And because I'm like, because we've got to go for something great. You've always got to go for greatness. And the fact we pulled the song off in like such a short amount of time, I think is just like really special. And like the song is really like, you know, the song comes from something very genuine in a way, from my side. And I had a really weird thing recently where a friend of mine, you know, had something really bad. Her mum had died, and she was trying to choose stuff for the funeral. And the person putting the funeral together was like, I sent her a message saying, I've just seen Amsterdam, this movie, and there's this beautiful song at the end. And this friend of mine was like, this is so weird. You know, my friend wrote this, and she had no idea. It was a complete coincidence. And for me, that was like a very moving sort of story about really what we all wanted the song to do, which is really sort of talk about life and talk about the moments we have in life and how grateful we should be for them, because they can disappear. And that's what I was trying to encapsulate in the song. And so it's kind of cool that, not particularly nice circumstances to find out that the song's connecting with people, but it's still quite magical.
Yeah, it definitely has that universal feel where it could be about a lost relationship or death. It's also got this timeless sound. When I was listening to it, I was like, this is something Luther Vandross could have sang in the 80s, or like Tony Braxton in the 90s. I mean, any great singer could have done this. And when I heard Giveon, he's got like, I don't want to say off because that sounds bad. He's got like, there's this quirk in his voice, and it immediately reminded me of like a Nina Simone song, the way that he vocally delivers it. What's your favorite quality about Giveon's voice and his performance on this song?
I mean, he's got like a really interesting timbre to his voice. You know, he instantly draws you in. You know, the first time I heard, you know, what they were doing, like what they did, I was like, okay, this is great. This is, you know, it's really interesting when someone takes it to a different, you know, when you're working with other people, how, you know, like Drake and Giveon and also the producer Johan can just take it to another level. And that's kind of what I felt, you know, his voice was doing. Really, he was just taking that track to another level. And it's an interesting thing for them to be involved with as well, because it is a sort of, I remember seeing one, I think some magazine referred to it as a throwback sound, but I'm like, it's just a classic. It's like a classic song can be like pulled apart and done in any way whatsoever. And I think it's super cool to have, you know, together all create something that feels already timeless.
Yeah, I mean, it might be sound like a throwback to some, but to me, it just sounds timeless. And I think it has so much melody. I think there's a lot of that missing in some of today's music. Have you ever thought about producing like a pop artist's full album, or have you thought about or talked about that with anyone before?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few songs now. Like this year, I did, you know, I did a song with Mick Jagger for the theme tune to Slow Horses. I did a couple of songs with some singers in the Bad Guys film with DreamWorks. I mean, I really like doing songs. I mean, you know, I'm primarily a film composer, but I love the challenge of a song, of like when you're a film composer, you're trying to like capture this world of a film within 2 hours or something. With a song, you've got to capture the entire idea into like a line and 3 minutes. And I love that conciseness. But yeah, I like producing stuff. It's the I mean, music industry politics, I'm less keen on. So
Yeah.
you know, if someone wants me to produce some stuff, I'm always kind of up for it. If I can, it always boils down to if I can do something interesting and different, and you know, what are we trying to say, and also like, have I got time? Because I'm so drowning in finishing other scores. But that's what I like trying to do with films, is just trying to work it out. You know, I always try and create a palette for a film score that hopefully feels special, and I love taking that into a song. Like we did that with Birds of Prey, the other Margot Robbie film, and you know, there's a big song, the big opening sequence song. You know, that all came out of the score, and you know, we just turned that into a big song at the beginning. And I think people are getting a bit more smart in terms of understanding that if you create these two worlds and you bring them together, score and song, you get something a lot more powerful rather than just a song that's like thrown in at the end of the movie with no connection to the film. You know, you can see it with like the stuff Ludwig's doing on Black Panther, how closely that is aligned. And I think, you know, hopefully studios are getting a bit more clever of realizing the collaborative nature of, you know, someone like a film composer, songwriter working with Drake, Giveon, all these other, you know, great artists, and making something that is can only exist in this world, and it's something that's unique for those artists as well.
You were nominated for Best Song a couple years ago for The Trial of the Chicago Seven. Hear My Voice with Celeste. What was that whole ride like? What do you remember about the actual Academy Awards ceremony itself? And what was like sort of the biggest memory you took away from that?
The biggest memory, if you want to be really honest, was the Thursday night. I was meant to fly on Thursday night, and because it was the suckiest Oscars, technically, it was the COVID Oscars. So I've been to my claim to fame is the only time I've been to the Oscars is the least glamorous Oscars of all time. And I have a bunch of memories from that, but weirdly, my body memories is Thursday night, and I was meant to fly on Thursday, basically. And I wasn't flying because my visa was not ready. The complexity because I was playing on the Oscars, I had to have a special work visa, and I had a different work visa, but didn't cut the mustard. So the insane amount of paperwork behind the scenes that was going on, I learned so much about the American visa system and how antiquated and complicated it is, involving pieces of paper being FedExed to like Kentucky or something. And basically, by Thursday night, I was like, Celeste had got on a plane on Thursday and I wasn't on that plane. And I was like, I'm not going to the Oscars because if I don't fly the next day, I basically didn't have enough time to quarantine to do it. And we were performing on the broadcast. And so I kind of went out, I kind of got a bit depressed, went to sleep, and I was just like, I can't believe this is not happening. And then my phone goes off in the morning. My girlfriend's like, just answer the phone. I was like, I'm not answering the phone. I'm like in a bad mood. I was like, all right, I'll answer it. And this guy answers like, hi, I'm your lawyer. And I'm like, I have a lawyer? And he's like, okay, so the paperwork is all ready. But, you know, you told someone you could get to the embassy, like you could cycle there. Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah, but because otherwise they courier it might take a few hours. I was like, I'm cycling. So I cycled like a crazy guy across London, like mental, just got out of bed, cycled across London, went to the embassy. Guy was waiting outside for me, gave me my passport. I was just like, yes, I have my passport. I then cycled back to my house. I arranged to get on a plane at midday. I threw everything I had into a bag. This is like a bag for like a week and a bit, right? And a computer system, because I had to go and work. I was still working on some things. I had to pack down my entire computer system, synthesizers, chuck everything in boxes, bags, and get to the airport. I get to the airport. Obviously, the airport's completely empty because no one's leaving the country. You can't leave Britain at this time. I had special governmental permission because I was representing the UK or some nonsense. And they're like, okay, why are you going to America? Going to the Oscars. Great. Really? Okay. And they're going through my visa and they're like, this visa was only stamped at like 10:15 a.m. and it's like 12 o'clock. How is this possible? And so I'm like, okay, here's what happened. And getting on that plane, when that plane finally took off, it was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe we made it. Because if I didn't make that plane, the whole thing would have been cancelled. The only other way involved me kind of flying to Mexico and coming in through the Mexican border because for some reason there was some legal loophole. And anyway, so that was, and the Oscars was great, but that is the memory for me, is getting there.
That's an incredible story. I love that. Well, Daniel, I could talk about music all day, but we need to wrap things up. Congratulations on the film, the score, the song. Hopefully you're back at the Oscars with one or both of them, and Giveon's up on that stage performing this time. So good luck with everything, and thanks for chatting with me today about Amsterdam.
Okay, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.